So yeah.
I gotta sit here so that I can play with her.
Yeah. Morning.
Welcome back.
Apparently. That's okay. No. Here, take this one because I'll grab one of these.
Looking in like, who the heck is she? How's Morgan doing? She's doing good? Okay.
Yep. So while she just entered her third trimester,
Okay,
so
yeah.
things are starting to go. Now that
Wait. I'm gonna move over there.
Too late.
I
Already did
can't
it.
see the baby.
Well, move some seats down.
Then I won't need this.
We can't.
Oh,
We can't do all the things.
I have X chromosomes. I can do what I want to.
I've got at least one.
I know, I was like, he's got X fly.
I got one of them.
You got whatever. But he's got an X chromosome too.
That's right.
But he doesn't have two. And you know what a Y chromosome is? It's just a deformed X chromosome where one lady's got off. Did you have fun visiting your grandma?
So I'm deformed, is what you're saying. Okay.
The boys were all, that's not true.
It might be. You don't know. You don't know.
How's my good today? You were right. Scotty's daughter just started talking to me. Everything's fine.
She either starts talking or she goes right to sleep. One of the two. There's no middle ground. So yeah, that's fine. She's probably got really good things to say. So think so? They haven't done anything. Yeah, that's right. We're the ones that mess them up. That's right.
I missed you. I'm so glad you're back.
Hi, Janet.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, and what is your name?
Mariette.
I would have known that, but the sun was glaring on me.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, Nancy. Good to have you here this morning. Thanks for coming. Oh, cool. Well, good deal.
And I was so happy she came and stayed for lunch with our connection group.
Yeah.
And half the people knew her. So
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. That's awesome. Yeah. That's great. Okay, Ephesians chapter 5. We're going to go ahead and at least turn there. And I know some people, if anybody's joining us online, they're like, what are we doing here? Why have we not started talking yet? So, do what? I know. So, it's 10 something. It's 10:45. We got to move fast. All I'm saying is, y'all talking about me, but I was sitting here at 10 o'clock, so I'm just saying. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have ever played the game Never Have I Ever. That can be a dangerous game. It can be a lot of fun if you do it a certain way with, for example, I used to play the game with teenagers when I was doing youth ministry. Actually, we called it Stacks. Yes, but I never have I ever. I'll explain it. It is a drinking game. So a lot of people play it as a drinking game where you say never have I ever, and then somebody makes a statement, never have I ever done such and such, and then if you have done that thing, you have to take a drink. So we're not going to play a drinking game here in Bible class this morning. I mean, let me say this. That's what I've heard. I don't know if that's actually how it works. But anyway, we can chug coffee. That's right. Take a sip. But I used to play this game with teenagers, but we call it Stacks because I'd have them all sit in a circle, and then I would say, never have I ever, and then I'd read a statement, and if they had done or hadn't done, I can't remember which one, they would have to get up and move over like 2 seats over. But if you hadn't, you stay in your seat. So you end up stacking kids, one on top of another, depending on how they move around the circle. So you could have like 4 or 5 people sitting on one chair, and just anyway. So I thought we'd just start out with just something fun this morning, just never have I ever. And you can we're not gonna. I mean, if you want to chug a sip of coffee, that's fine. But just like maybe more of a show of hands. Yes, I have. No, I haven't. I know you're joking because it's in your back pocket right now. Boom. So yeah. So you can say yes, I have, or no, I haven't done this. And if anybody's watching online, you can make a comment, yes, I have, or no, I haven't done this. Okay. I just cut these sentences off.
So every time I play it, somebody gets confused. Now, is this never have I ever? Am I supposed to move if I have or if I haven't?
Right.
So we're playing it. You're moving.
We're not moving.
You're raising your hand.
This is yes.
You're just raising our hands if we have never done it, right?
If you,
Or if we have done it.
well, what would y'all rather? Never have I ever. Never have I would be I have not done this, right?
Right. Never have I ever played Never Have I Ever.
Yes. Okay.
Well, Marshall said
All right.
something he's never done. And
Yeah.
I have done that. Then you raise your hand.
So if you have done it, raise your hand. Okay. Okay. And if you're online and you have done now, seriously, I got a bunch of these. I'm just reaching in. I don't know what I'm asking until I pull it up. Never have I ever used someone else's toothbrush. I've done that. If you have done that, if you've used someone else's toothbrush, raise your hand. Was it a family member? Has anybody ever used a non-family member's toothbrush? Yeah, that's a family member. You're married. Your spouse is your family. I've used someone else's toothbrush that I had no relation to whatsoever. So, okay, well, I feel like I just got judged right there. All right. Never have I ever sang karaoke. You sang karaoke? You have? Yeah. I can't remember if I have. Have you done it a lot? Have you done karaoke? Have you done it a lot?
Yeah, I mean, like
Like, what's your go-to song? What's the song? Or what's one of your favorites? Oh, nice. Nice. Numb by Linkin Park. It's a rock and roll band that maybe not everybody in this room has heard of. Oh, I have done karaoke. I forgot. I did at Harding one time. I did. And it was terrible. I mean, we were terrible. Me and the guy that were singing were terrible. Somebody else, what's your song, Mariette?
I have no idea. I've only done
You've just done, well, what'd you do? What song did you do?
I don't remember.
What?
I'm too old. My memory's going.
How great that are. In the piano bar. Huh? I Will Survive. Nice. Anybody else? You don't remember it?
We got a box, a karaoke box.
Yeah.
Boys one year for Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The first time I did it, it's
Uh-huh.
like a core memory. It was at our music class.
Uh-huh.
She let us choose a song, and we chose Brick House, but we didn't understand what that.
Brick House, like, she's a brick.
We just heard it.
House.
Growing up, and so we're like, oh, Brick House, that's fun. And then we saw the words, and she was like, no, we're not. Next song.
Okay, so Harding University, somewhat conservative Church of Christ school that I was at, they brought a karaoke booth one day into the student center, and just the company sets it up. They got a list of songs, and somebody got in and started singing Sir Mix-a-Lot's "Baby Got Back," which is all about the size of someone's backside. And somebody started singing that, and like you see somebody come running, like, cut it off, cut it off. Anyway, all right. Never have I ever been on a blind date. I haven't been on a blind date, I don't think. You been on a blind date? How'd it work out?
It worked out great till I met the man I married.
Oh,
I dated him when I
man, I was hoping it was going to be the man you married, but it wasn't the man you married. It was somebody else.
but then I met the one I did marry.
Ah, okay. So that worked out better. You traded up.
I traded up.
Yeah. Okay. You been on a blind date?
We did good.
It wasn't fun.
It wasn't fun. You kind of survived.
I did.
Yeah. Okay. You ever been on a blind date, Brandon?
Is it you haven't met the person at all before you were there?
Yeah, and probably aren't totally for sure who they are, but for sure you had never met them before. Yeah. I went on a date one time when I was in college with a girl who I forgot her name, And so I went to meet. I knew when we were supposed to go out, and I went to meet her, and I'm like, I don't even know who I'm supposed to ask for, because you had to call at the dorm. You had to call it. I'm like, luckily she was in the dorm lobby when I got there. I was like, hey, and so eventually somebody said her name, and I was like, that's it. Okay, that's terrible. I know.
Phyllis said that she went on an awful blind date.
On
And
a-
I just want to know more.
I know. And now we're like, all right, Phyllis, the floor is yours. Just start. No, right now, tap it in the comments, man. Tell us. Phyllis, everybody wants you to text right now and tell them what the thing was. I don't know. Okay, now we're asking why you're not here, Phyllis. Okay. That's right. Yeah, you at least knew who they were. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if yeah. It would be weird. There's a whole, what's that? You've Got Mail is all about a blind date, man. It's an entire movie about a blind date. Never have I ever pranked someone. Haha, I've pranked people multiple times. Have you ever not played a prank on somebody? Come on, Lou. You've pranked somebody. Man. Yeah. When I
dressed really crazy and went to my friend's house, and her little girl came and I said, I'm with social services. I need to talk to your mom.
Oh my.
Didn't recognize me.
You pretended to be a social services person at somebody's house? Man. I'm like, we toilet papered a car. You're like, holy cow.
She was a really good friend, thank goodness.
Probably not as much after that. Oh my gosh. All right. When I was in high school, me and my buddy shoe polished so many people's cars that after a while, anytime that it got done, people just assumed it was us, even if it wasn't us, because we did it so often. We were good at it. Huh? Well, it washes off. Oh yeah. If you do it on the glass, it washes off. You don't get it on the paint. Don't get it on the paint. No. Yeah, there was a certain technique to it.
At church camp, they parked my car in between where have you ever been to the Mount Fort Christian camp in Broken Bow? But it has the amphitheater and then it goes right to the cafeteria.
Okay.
And they parked my car right in the middle.
They moved it there?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they were like, why is your car right here? And I was like, I don't know, I didn't do it. I don't know, I got my keys.
And they're like, yeah, right.
I know, I was like,
Yeah.
My brother and
Yeah.
sister-in-law got married on October 30th, and they were, after the wedding, the groomsmen were out there messing with the car, and the police came up and thought they were pranking it for Halloween.
Oh.
So it was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
They had to convince them that there was a wedding going on in the church.
Yep.
And
I was telling somebody the other day, I was at a wedding again when I was in college. No, this is after I moved here, actually. Anyway, went to a wedding. The guy knew that we would, shoe polish and do whatever else to the car. So he parked the actual car, his truck that they were going to take on. I was telling you this, they're going to take on their honeymoon at a random grocery store in town that he knew we wouldn't know where to look for it. And then they had a decoy car set up at the church building. So we would, mess that up, but then he would have the actual. So anyway, we needed more supplies to put on the car. So I drove to this random grocery store and parked nose to nose. And I was like, oh, that looks like his truck. And I go looking in, I see all the luggage in the back seat. I'm like, I found it. I go driving back and get all the guys. And we drive to the grocery store and just completely cover his truck in shoe polish and saran wrap and everything else. He was not happy.
oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Lisa Mosley's cousins took the front seat because they had a front seat. They literally took the front seat out of the passenger side
Uh-huh.
and turned it around backwards and put it back in there.
Put the seat in backwards? Holy cow. I think I told y'all one time.
They carry this prank in. And it wasn't just the spray stuff, the silly string.
Mhm.
It was everywhere too.
Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, there's all sorts of things you can do. You take the bird seed and put it, or glitter, and put it in the air conditioning vents. So when they turn the air, yeah.
you never get it down there. I sold my car seat in there.
Put an onion down in the vent? That's just mean. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah. I had a buddy who was allergic to cats, and they got married at a country church, and there was this cat roaming around. And so when we were messing with his car, we took the cat and threw it. He had a like a hatchback, and we threw the cat in the car.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, because we thought it'd be really funny for him to drive our ways and start sneezing and stuff, and they're like, what is the deal? And this random cat. We didn't think about those kind of consequences, about how bad it could be. It was just going to be really funny. That's why we did it. So anyway, as like she gets in the car, and I think he had to throw one last bag in the car, and he opens the back, and like this cat comes shooting out. And he turns around, he's like, seriously? We're like, man, all right. Anyway, I don't want to do that one. That was just, yeah. Ooh, never have I ever stolen anything. Who's going? Oh, Lori confesses. Anybody else? Lori Glenn, Mariette Flores. If any law enforcement officers are watching right now. What'd you steal? What'd you steal? Does that count as stealing, though? You're stealing makeup, man. What'd you steal, Mariette? She don't want to say now. Now we're talking about makeup. Okay. I used to take the little no smoking signs and stuff when restaurants used to have like smoking and non-smoking sections. I would take those little signs. Probably the worst one that I did. I was at a Chili's in Little Rock again when I was in college, and there's a square sign that said "Fire Exit Only," and I pulled that off and stuck it under my shirt and walked out of the restaurant with this square. Obviously, just keep on walking. And I put it on the bathroom door of our dorm room. It just, so I stole. Huh? Whataburger numbers? Yeah. I had a whole stack of Mazio's at different restaurants, the numbers for them. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what'd you steal?
So you just reminded me of about 5 things we used to do. We used to go at Christmas time. Well, we would take one light out of like someone's outside strand of lights.
Oh, yeah.
When we were reading Animal Farm, my senior year of high
Uh-huh.
school, we went and stole a bunch of yard animals from houses and put them all in front of the teacher's yard.
The one that the teacher was making you read Animal Farm. You put a bunch of animals in her yard.
But we stole them all from other people's yards.
Yeah.
Teachers, door stoppers.
And then we used to take, those like restaurant signs that have like the little plaque, the light up signs, and they put the words on.
Oh yeah.
We used to go and steal all those letters, and then like we would do it all the time.
Yeah.
And then like one restaurant like started putting chicken wire.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. We've already covered that verse, though. He who has been stealing must steal no longer. We're stealing no longer. Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're stealing no longer. No longer laboring. That's right. That's right. I have friends that stole like street signs. I never did that. We used to take this is mean, but we used to take real estate signs, like for sale signs, and put them in other people's yards. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My brother stole something once, and I saw that my mother made him take it back to the store and apologize and go through all that. And I guess that kind of convinced me maybe I could.
Yeah. I told you, I confessed a while back that I used to steal grapes when I was a kid in the grocery store. That was stealing. Okay, we'll do some more of that some other time. But the whole thing about never have I ever. There's things that even some of the stuff that we were looking at, you think, well, have I done that? Is that a behavior that I have done, or is that something that I'm still doing? And in a fun way, you kind of have to think about some of your actions, either currently or some of the things you've done in the past, and maybe what kind of effect those had on other people, or maybe even, I mean, Lou, you just said, like, you saw, was it your brother that got in trouble for stealing, and like that had an effect on you. So either the people that we're around, or the people, sometimes even our own choices, but often just the people around have, some kind of influence on us. Probably some of the pranks that I did had nothing to do with me coming up with that. It was the guys I was hanging around with. They're like, hey, let's do this. And I'm like, yeah, let's do that, because you get influence. You get the people that you spend the most time with have some kind of effect on you. And I want us to think about that as we look at what we're looking at in Ephesians chapter 5 today. Okay. So we started talking last week about being children of light. Actually, at the very end of class, we were talking about that. So we're going to pick up there, Ephesians chapter 5, starting with verse 8. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. So live as children of light, for the fruit of the light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. This is why it is said, wake up, O sleeper, and rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. So, we were talking last week about, we got to the end of class, we were talking about this difference between darkness and light. And specifically, Paul says you were darkness. That it was part of our DNA to be in darkness. And we talked about, that's is Paul's description of being in sin and being separated from God. That God is light. I believe it's John that says, God is light and in him is no darkness at all. And so we're either darkness or we're light. And so the darkness, the choices that we made that were ungodly, it wasn't just that we were in the dark or around the dark. It consumed us. It was part of what defined us, part of what defined our character until we met Jesus. And he says, but now you are light in the Lord. This is where we ended last week and talking about like it's part of our DNA. It's like we are called to not only try to be in the light, but to be light, to allow light to exude from us, shine out from us, not just shine on us, but become a source of it as well. Okay, so this is where we ended class last week. So I want to pick up here first of all. What do you think, when you think of Paul's words here, live as, or maybe your translation says, walk as children of light. What does that mean? What is it? How do I live like a child of light? Sometimes we get into like church speak and we don't really, think about what does that actually mean? What do you think, Mariette?
Well, in verse 9 it tells us light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. So if we're supposed to live as children of the light, those would be the things we're supposed to be doing.
So do the things that he mentions there in verse 9. Live as children of light for the fruit of light. And we're talking about fruit. That's what's produced by your life, right? The fruit of light consists of goodness, righteousness, and truth. So, okay, let's go with that then. What are we talking about when we say goodness, righteousness, and truth? What is goodness?
Well, it's the opposite of bad.
Okay.
It's just doing something nice.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I mean, it's not just not doing anything bad, it's actually doing something good. Right.
Producing something good.
Like the difference between like peacekeeper and peacemaker. Like peacemaker is like you take action on it. Peacekeeper is kind of like
I'm going to maintain
peacemaker is like you take initiative on it.
versus taking action. My connection group that I meet with every other week, we've been going through the fruits of the Spirit. And one of the fruits of the Spirit is goodness. And that's the one that we talked about this last Sunday. And we were talking about like how it seems like the easiest thing to define, and yet there's parts of it, in a way, it's difficult. Because you're just like, well, be good. Be a good person. Well, what does that mean to be a good person? It does mean more than just don't be bad. Yes, ma'am.
It was kind of like Sunday when that man, you had him up front, and everybody come up to pray with him because he was having problems
Right.
in his life and things. That's goodness.
That is good. Like being supportive, being compassionate to somebody else. And that's what we talked about, and this, I think this is what y'all are getting at. There has to be action to it. I can not do bad things, and I guess that's being good, but when we talk about goodness, when we see goodness mentioned in Scripture, it's very similar to kindness. It's compassionate. I'm doing something for the benefit of somebody else. And so part of being a child of light is I want to do something good for other people. Now he also says righteousness. Okay, well, that seems really similar to goodness. What's the difference in goodness and righteousness? Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. I think righteousness, I will take it from there, Janet. It's a good start. I think we're talking about being, first of all, in a right relationship with God, knowing who God is, but righteousness is more about character. Goodness comes from your character, but goodness has the action to it. Right? Righteousness is I am choosing to do the right things and being the right person because I'm in a right relationship with God. Right. It's more about your character itself. Mm-hmm. Right. You can do good things and not be righteous. Right. You have to be in that right relationship with God, which, we talk about. That's part of the process of grace and acceptance of that grace and becoming a Christian is getting righteous, becoming righteous. Okay. And then truth. What are we talking about when he says truth? Not lying. Yeah, let's start with not lying, right? I think this goes back to we talked about when we were looking at chapter 4 when Paul said to put off falsehood and speak truthfully to each other. It's not just stating facts. It is being sincere. It is being genuine. That's in, I believe, John chapter 8 when Jesus says that. You shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. It's absent of falsehood. There's no manipulation. There's nothing fake. It is pure. It is genuine. It is sincere. And again, sometimes I think that involves us being real and being honest, maybe even not just about what we believe and what our faith is, but also about maybe what even some of our struggles are. Hey, this is where my life is right now, and I'm being honest about that. This is what I'm struggling with. This is a temptation I'm struggling with, or whatever. That's part of the truth. That's part of the genuineness as well. Okay? So here's all these things that Paul says. Be children of light. And in case you wonder what that looks like, do good things. Be in a right relationship with God. Be honest and genuine and real with people. That's what it looks like to be a child of light. Anything else from you guys? Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Okay. I did not look to see which word is actually there in the Greek. So that would be very similar to what he says in Galatians 5. This is the fruit of the Spirit. If you got the Spirit in your life and you're living according to the way the Spirit wants you to live, this is what's produced. And then he says in verse 10, find out what pleases the Lord. How do we, well, does anybody have something different there than find out what pleases the Lord? Discern? Oh, instead of what pleases the Lord, what is acceptable? Okay. Does anybody, so discern, mine says find out. Is there anything else there? Okay. So this isn't just about, I'm not crazy about the way that the NIV translates it as find out what pleases the Lord, because it sounds like, I'm searching for something. I mean, I guess that's part of it. I'm searching for something, but when Brandon, you said, and I think Daisy, you said yours says discern. What does it mean to discern something? That's a little bit different than finding out something, to me. Yeah, I've got something, and it's not just finding out information about it. It's figuring out what's good about it, what's right about it, why this is more important than this. There's a level of judgment that comes to it. I know, we don't like that word judgment because it makes it sound like criticism, but this isn't about criticizing God or criticizing his path. It's I guess figuring out not just the direction that God is calling us to go, but why that matters, why that is the direction to go. Yes, ma'am.
I like the fact too, in front it says proving what is acceptable.
That's where, okay, so proving, which is more similar to the Greek word. I am proving the accuracy of something. I'm proving the truth of something. This is, I'm getting to the core of this, I guess would be a good way to put it. Finding out what the Lord's will is or what is acceptable, but I'm getting to the heart of it. Okay? So, putting all that together, how do we get to the core of finding out how it is God wants us to live? Oh man, I thought you were going to say, he said it had to be in the Word, and you're right. You're right. But what has he just been talking about in verses 8 and 9? What's the key word? Live as children of light. So I've got to be in the light, and I've got to not just allow myself to be in the light, but try to allow light to be produced in my life. And the more that I do that, the more I seek to be in the light, and the more that I seek for that light to be shown out of my life, the more I recognize, I figure out, I get to the core of not only who God is, but how he wants me to live. I just lost my train of thought. It's a process of learning, I guess, through experience. I'm going to find out exactly how God wants me to live the more I am trying to live the way that God wants me to live. Does that make sense? And I think that's what he's getting at here. Be children of light. Walk that way. Live that way. And the more you do that, the less often you're going, man, I don't know what God's will is for my life. No, I got it. I'm figuring it out.
Well, it's kind of like marriage. I mean, you go into that, but you don't really know that other person.
Mm-hmm.
But as time goes by, you learn about that person.
Right.
Just like as time goes by, you discern what the truth is, how you're supposed to live.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. The more I'm in this relationship, I may know something about that person when we start out. I may even have a picture of what this relationship is going to look like, but I figure it out more the more that I'm in it and experiencing it. Yeah. So I think that's what Paul is getting at there. Like it's not just a broad statement, hey, go be children of light. Oh, okay. I don't know what that means. No. Yeah. Like everybody would just assume, oh, okay, I can do that. But then he gives you a couple of details. Go be good. Go make sure you're in a right relationship with God. Be real and be genuine and be sincere with people. And the more that I do that on a regular basis, the more I get to the core of God's character and God's will for my life. Okay? Let's keep going. Because he kind of gives you the warning, okay, here's what to avoid, all right? Verse 11, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. So we're back to darkness again. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. Now, he just got done saying that we produce fruit when we're living as children of light. If stay in the dark, what happens? We don't produce fruit. If you got gardens, if you ever done any kind of planting, what happens to those plants and flowers that just stay in the dark? They die. You gotta have light if you're going to grow. You don't produce fruit. Okay, fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them, is what the NIV says. Does somebody else have something different there? At the end of verse 11. Right, and that's what I wanted to look at. So, what do you have? Reprove them. Mm-hmm. Expose, reproves. Anybody else have another word? Okay, it's either one of those two. I don't like the word reprove either. I mean, the original Greek word that's used here is to prove. It's more like a conviction almost. I am proving the innocence or guilt of something with compelling evidence. That's kind of the key part of it. It's like there's no doubt this is the way this thing is. Okay, so if you apply that to what Paul is talking about here, kind of going back to what Janet was just saying, it's not just that I see the fruitless deeds of darkness, and not just that I recognize what it's like to live in spiritual darkness, but I am convinced what the end result of that life is going to be, and I can prove that to people who are still in the dark. Now, I'm that bothers me a little bit. Exposing darkness and proving that people in the dark are in the dark. I'm not being very, I'm being in the dark of my words right now. I'm not being very clear.
Well, I think it's hard. It's easier to be grateful and thankful and happy about someone who's doing good. Sometimes it's really hard to expose someone that you love.
Mm-hmm.
That they're in the darkness. It's hard to expose them.
So, and I guess that's kind of what my question is. What are we talking about when Paul says to prove it or to reprove them or expose them?
Because to me, there's a fine line between, exposing somebody or judging them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could come across as, well, who are you to judge me?
Mm-hmm. It sounds like criticism, doesn't it? It sounds like I'm gonna point out all your faults.
But Jesus did that in the temple. I mean,
Yeah, but even with Jesus, I mean, this is one of the hang-ups for me. When Jesus was I guess to use this word reproving or exposing things, it was usually the church people, the people who were what were labeled as sinful. It's not that he excused it, but you don't see him like pointing a finger and going, "You are doing wrong," and yet at the same time, there's a beautiful example of it in John chapter 4 when he's talking with a Samaritan woman, and he says to her, "Yeah, you've had 5 husbands. Guy you're with now ain't your husband." Like, but it obviously it didn't come across in a critical or judging way because she continued to have the conversation with him. What were you going to say, Brandon?
I had a question because mine says, take no part in unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, them isn't like it points to the works, not the person.
Yeah.
Hearing the things that are bad, so I'm gonna look at Lou and say, I'm exposing you. I'm taking a discerning action. I'm taking discernment and looking at the actions in general,
Mm-hmm.
realizing where they lead, and I'm exposing those things in my life and saying, this is where this will take me. Instead of look at Lou doing these things, that's where I don't want to be.
Yeah.
But then if you're exposing those things and then you see Lou for who she really is, and say, no, but you can discern and say, I see and I understand that this is what happens whenever you're stuck in darkness. I can see that, and because I understand where this darkness leads, like I'm not judging her, but I don't know.
It's more about, I think what you're saying is more about exposing the action itself and not making a judgment on the person themselves.
Yeah. Well, in your example too, like Jesus can make a judgment because he is the judge.
Right.
But like us, we can judge the actions and say like, oh man, that's definitely not where I want to be. So we can make judgment calls, but I cannot say. So I can say, man, the things that Lou is a part of are not great, and I want to help be a part of bringing that out. But I also can't say, man, that stinks. Lou is destined to an eternity in hell.
Yeah.
Like, I can't make that judgment. Like I can't judge her, but I can make.
You can't judge exactly what the consequences are going to be, or the eternal consequences are going to be. But
I can judge between
you
right
can.
and wrong.
Yes.
and it comes about exposing.
I got like 3 different comments. Go ahead, Janet.
It comes about exposing them because it's shameful to do, even what they do in secret.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some exposing here.
Yes, there is.
But it says in verse 11, but have no fellowship with the unfruitful works
Mm-hmm.
of darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say the unfruitful people, it says the unfruitful works of darkness,
Right.
but rather expose them. So to me, I agree with you, it's going back to the works
Mm-hmm.
that need to be exposed. For it's shameful even to speak of those things which are done by them in secret. So that's the people that are in darkness that are doing these things, the works they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
that are shameful
Mm-hmm.
to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
However,
After saying all that, we're talking about the works.
I agree with you right there to that point. But however, aren't we also told that if we see someone that has fallen away, we're supposed to bring them back?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you would have to at some point point out to them, this, Marshall, you got to quit drinking so much on Saturday night, showing up on Sunday night.
Your sermons, your slurring your speech. I mean, you really got to knock that off.
So at some point you have to put the person in there with the act.
Yes. Yes.
Because it's not the deeds that end up in hell. It is ultimately
The person who is doing the deeds. Yes. What were you going to say?
Well, if we go back and look at this from verse 8, for you were once darkness,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, should be the children of light, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that, I think that's almost like searching your own soul out and exposing the bad in you, not necessarily the other person.
It could be. Yeah. Looking at my own life and am I. Mm-hmm.
And exposing that and admitting that to God that, hey, this is a problem.
I've got a dark spot in my life, and I need
And
I need the light shined on it. Mm-hmm.
Do you think it could be all those then, where it's like an internal, but then the
But
deeds, but then
yeah.
also I do.
It's a combination of all of it. I think I don't want to overcomplicate it. I don't think Paul wants it to overcomplicate it.
I'm trying to, imagine like what light does. Like
Mhm.
light doesn't just pinpoint on one thing; it like hits multiple things at once.
Right.
So I think that it's multiple different areas where it's like, I don't know, my brain goes to like more of a be an example instead of like telling you what to do.
Mhm.
It's just like let that light flow onto them instead
Right.
of like, here, take this light.
Yeah.
And like exposing that. I don't know. Kinda like
So
the light.
and this
Thin light.
unless it's a laser light where it's just that one spot. And this is kind of I'm along the same train of thought. I think I'm hesitant. And this is probably a cultural thing, and this is a personality thing. I don't like that what comes up in my mind as exposing darkness, because I feel like it's finger pointing. I feel like it's the guy on the bullhorn on the street corner pointing out all the people's faults and all their sins, and that's too extreme, but that's where my mind goes. But I think there's something to be said for it, as you brought up just a minute ago, when Paul says in Galatians 6, man, if you see somebody caught up, he says caught in a sin, do what you can to restore them, but he puts a word on there at the end, restore them gently. This is not, even if we take this as exposing dark deeds in somebody else's life, there's a gentleness that's supposed to happen with that, and if you think about even how light, enters a room, it's not always just a ball of fire. It obviously drives out darkness, but it's not supposed to be just always painful. Sometimes it is, I guess, if you've been in the dark long enough, so you got the light in your eyes, that hurts a little bit. But I think there's something, I think it's kind of a combination here. I think Paul is saying that we need to expose dark spots, maybe in our own lives, as Mariette just said, or in the lives of others. And maybe that's through a conversation. But I think what Brandon and Lou have both mentioned, you need to focus more on the dark, if I can call it this, the dark deed, and not necessarily calling that person a dark person. That it's not, you're not addressing them as a person as much as, hey, I see the actions that you're taking, and I can see where that's headed, or I can see where you are. You're in darkness, and the light is so much better.
It's like teaching the truth in love.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that with love, then you don't need to go into that at all.
Yeah. Paul says, man, if I don't have love, then I can say all the words I want to say, and it just sounds like somebody banging cymbals.
And I feel, who are we to judge others when we need to look at ourselves?
This is true. See, and I go back and forth on that, though. You don't want to judge others, but at the same time, there's multiple verses about, like, the difference between right and wrong. You're allowed to discern, to use that word, between right and wrong. And I think we're allowed to tell people, I think the choice that you're making is not the right choice. It has nothing to do with how I feel about you. It has nothing to do with me saying that I'm a better person than you. I've got my own dark spots. I've got my own struggles.
Allowed may not be the right word because it's not just allowed. We're told to do that.
Yes. But I do want to say this, going back to what Daisy was saying just a second ago. I think the other part of exposing these dark things goes back to living as children of light. If I am producing light, you're going to see a difference between me and somebody else who's not in the light. That's part of the exposure, if I can use that word. That, like, you can tell when when there's light in the room next to a dark room. That room next to a lit up room looks really, really dark. There's a definitive difference there. If you've been outside, you've been around like a campfire or something, you get to a certain point when you're around the fire, you can see people's faces, you can see everything. You look out a certain distance, you can't see anymore, right? And I think that's part of what Paul is getting at here as well. Not just verbally or physically pointing out the differences between it, but people should just see there's a difference in me because I am producing good and I'm trying to be in this right relationship. I'm trying to be real and genuine. That looks different than the rest of the world that doesn't live in the light. Yes, ma'am.
I'm thinking back to when I was growing up, they used to disfellowship people.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I think as an adult that that was a smart move to make, but
Right.
I do think that if at some point, and I don't really know, yes, you're a good person,
Mm-hmm.
but I know a very good person that I don't believe knows God.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be a good person and not know God.
Right. Being a good person is not enough.
You have to make that decision of do I confront that person? Because I want them to know God.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that according to what Scripture says, what they're doing is a life of sin.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just tremendously good people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've kind of got to the point where I'm like, society seems to be a who am I to judge type
Mm-hmm.
society.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there has to be a point where you do something.
I do too.
See somebody in sin. You can't just say, well, I've got sin too in my life, and so I'm not going to. Yes, I've got sin, and I would hope that somebody would point my sin
Mm-hmm.
out to me so I could work on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying, let me tell you what I see the Scripture to say.
Yeah. For sure. I'm totally agreeing with everything that you're saying. I think that, I mean, Jesus even says there's going to be good people that aren't going to make it. There's going to be people that call out, Lord, Lord. And he's going to say, I don't know you. I never had a relationship with you. That's between him and them. But that puts at least some responsibility on us to expose the darkness, to tell people, I don't think that you're in I'm worried about what's going to happen to you because of the path that you're on.
It's out of love.
Yeah.
Not judgment. When I tell my 5-year-old, hey, the street is not the place to play, and she says, no, that's the place to play. If I said, all right, well,
I don't want to judge you for.
yeah, well then that's super unloving of me because I'm not providing protection.
We're talking a 5-year-old.
But it's the principle.
But I'm saying, I think it's easier to, because you're the parent, you would be able to correct a 5-year-old. But if I meet someone as an equal, the people that I'm thinking of right now are basically my age.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe a little younger.
Mm-hmm.
But you just wouldn't find nicer people in the world
Mm-hmm.
that would give you their shirt off their back,
Mm-hmm.
the tomatoes out of their garden, whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
They're just those kind of people. But it's something that I struggle with.
For sure.
At what point do I feel comfortable talking to them? Or
That's really a judgment on your part. What kind of relationship do you have with that person?
does it need to be somebody that's super close to them? I mean, I consider us friends, but it's not like the friendship I have with my
Mm-hmm. I don't have. I don't have an.
I think that circles back to relationship with God, and like even just like in the unknown, like prayer is, I don't know, because I feel like any situation that's like this, it's situational. It's not. This is the way you have to approach it every single time with every single person.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Like with your boys, I'm sure you approach them each differently.
Very much so.
So like I think
Yeah.
it's this exact same situation,
Mhm.
that it's going to God and like what wisdom, how do I approach this? And because like we have a very close friend that Cody and I, like we've always debated like how do we approach, like it's one of those people that's like they're one of the best people I've known, and they didn't have God in their life, and we just kind of like we would bring up situations and like they'd immediately shut it down. And so we're kind of like, okay, we tested the waters and we just kind of lived our same life. Like we pray at these certain points, we do this, like God is a part of our life, and like now he's testing out church is kind of like his situation. So like we're just leaving it alone because we open up the door if he wants to talk about it, but we don't push it. So it's just that's what worked for him. But then there are some people where it's like like my brother, like I would not the one that lives here, but the other one, like he's more of a direct person. Like you tell him how it is, and that's what's gonna get to him, and that's how it works. But some people, it's like if you approach me with like judgment, it's like sorry about it. I can't. I like recluse, and I'm like, please don't.
Yeah.
But it's situational. I feel like.
I agree. It's a fluid thing. There's no hard and fast way to do it. Which brings me back to what Paul is saying here. I'm going to be light, and you're going to see a difference in me and people who are in the darkness. That's part of the exposure. But I think, even though Paul doesn't directly address it here this way, I think Scripture teaches us that at some point, it's good to have those conversations. How you do that, I think Daisy's right. It kind of depends on how close you are to him and how you want to approach it, and I guess I go back to maybe the parable that Jesus gave of the sower. You throw out the seed and see what happens. The farmer threw out the seed, and there were different circumstances that determine what happened to the seed, right? But at least the farmer went to the trouble of throwing out the seed. So I think I think when you're talking about introducing somebody to Jesus who maybe already even is a good person, well, there was pretty good soil out there too, but that seed still didn't take root. It wasn't the farmer's fault. He still made the effort to throw the seed. Does that make sense?
It does. But these people read their Bible every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, it's not like there's a specific aspect of their life that needs to change.
Okay.
According to Scripture.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
I got you. So this isn't about
Hurting someone.
okay.
I mean, yeah, I definitely do not want to disfellowship.
Right.
But there's a particular spot in their life that Scripture just says you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of life.
Mm-hmm. I think if it's weighing on your heart, at some point you gotta have the conversation. Out of love, you're concerned. I guess. Lou told us to show up. We're not for sure why we're here. Well, I'm not either. So I'm just kidding. But I think the overall principle here is again pointing out the darkness, not being critical of the people who are in the dark, but hopefully allowing them to see that they are in the dark, whether that's through the conversation or whether they just see that in my actions. I need to live as children of light. Let's go on real quick because I want to finish up this paragraph. But everything exposed by the light becomes visible. Well, I'm sorry, let me go back to verse 12. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret. Then he says, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. You can see the difference, is what I was talking about. You can see the difference between people who are spiritually in the light and producing light in their lives and those who aren't. Hold your finger there in Ephesians chapter 5 real quick, go back or scroll back on your phones or whatever, John chapter 3. If you don't know much about John chapter 3, this is when Jesus has a conversation with a guy named Nicodemus. Nicodemus was a religious person. He was a good person. But he has some questions about Jesus. And John is specific to mention that Nicodemus came to Jesus and to have a conversation with him at what time of day? At the night, okay? And I think we mentioned this last week, but in ancient times, when it was nighttime, it was dark. Like there weren't street lights. In some of your bigger cities, you might have, some torches around like we see in the movies, but honestly, there wasn't even that much. You'd have some soldiers walk around with their own torches and stuff. It is dark. He comes to Jesus at night with these questions for him. And so through that conversation, we get to the really famous verse, John 3:16, God so loved the world, that he sent his only son. Whosoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. We've heard that verse before. A lot of us have, okay? But keep reading through the rest of that. So in John chapter 3, I'm going to start in verse 18. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because he has not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Verse 19, this is the verdict, or this is the truth, okay? Light has come into the world, but men love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that his deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly that what he has done has been through God. So this is about 20 to 30 years before what Paul writes here in the book of Ephesians, okay? But what does Jesus say about light and darkness there in John chapter 3? There is light. Who is light? It's Jesus, right? And before Jesus came into the world is in darkness. It's in sin. But the light came into the world, and what did some people still choose? They still choose darkness, okay? And they don't want, specifically, they want to stay in the dark because why? They don't want anybody to see what it is they're doing, okay? Think about that, what Paul says here, everything back in chapter 5 of Ephesians, it's shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. It's the same principle. There's people who are going to choose to be darkness because they like the dark. But there's a definitive difference between light and darkness. When I choose light, when I choose Jesus, when I give my life to Jesus and allow him to be in me and to shine out of me, there's a definitive difference in me and the people who have not chosen that. At least there should be. Okay? And if somebody chooses to stay away from the light, that's their choice. They're choosing the darkness. But you can't help but see a difference, I think is what Paul is saying here. You can't help but see a difference between people who are light and who are darkness, which honestly goes back to all the stuff that he was just talking about in the second half of chapter 4 all the way up to this point now. There's a difference between people who speak in falsehood and manipulation and people who are truthful and genuine. There's a definitive difference between people who steal and people who work and bless other people with what they work for. There's a difference in people who are angry and resentful and spiteful and people who are encouraging and loving. There's a difference in people who are into all sorts of immorality and impurity and people who are trying to watch their words and trying to watch their actions. There's just a difference. But it's still a choice as to whether I want to be a child of light or whether I want to stay in the dark. So all these things we've been talking about, from this old self to new self and becoming an imitator to being a child of light. There's 3 different ways for Paul to basically say the same thing. There's a difference. And he's talking to a group of people who apparently had not been demonstrating the difference. It's church people that he's talking to. He's not talking to lost people. He's not talking to unsaved people. He's talking to the already saved. And he's saying, stop doing these things. Stop living like your old self. Stop doing the things you used to do. start becoming, we mentioned that word, not just be, but work on becoming this imitator of God, this new person, this person that's in the light, this child of light. You're looking too much like you're still in the dark. There's not a difference between you, where you are, and where the people in the darkness are. There needs to be. Okay? And it's not, at least for once, it's not Paul pointing fingers and criticizing. He's going, look, here's the difference. Which one are you going to choose? Choose the light. Wake up, and this is the last part. Wake up, O sleeper. Rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. You sleep at night, especially in ancient times, in the dark. There was no light. Okay? As soon as the sun comes up, it illuminates everything. Light shines on everything else. Is there a difference when we go on wilderness trek? When the sun goes down and when the sun comes up?
Our day is done.
Yeah. We don't realize the group that we go climbing the mountain with, they don't let us have watches. So we never know exactly what time it is. The guides do, but we never know. And, you know, the sun goes down behind the mountain that you're on. It might be, 6 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night. But it's like midnight. You know, we just, all right, well, it's time to go to bed. We just go get in the tent. And then when the sun comes up, I don't even know what time that is, but it's probably a whole lot earlier than what, especially some of those teenagers would normally get up, because that's what light does. When there's no light, man, it is dark. It is dark, dark. Even with stars, it is dark. When the light comes up, it illuminates everything.
Those are almost two different worlds.
It is. Wake up, sleeper. Get out of the darkness. Wake up, and Christ will shine his light on you so that you can be a reflection of that light in the lives of others. And I'll say this, just a quick side note, that most of your Bibles will have that wake up, O sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you kind of as its own little separate paragraph. Most scholars think that's like either part of a song that may have started to be sung in these early churches, or a poem that had been recited. It's not a quote from the Old Testament or anything like that, but he says this is why it's said. So it had already, in the 30 years of the life of the church to this point, it had already become maybe a song that was, we've all got songs that are familiar to a lot of different, churches. It had become one of those kinds of, a lyric or a poem or something. Now, there's phrases in it that might match things in the Old Testament, but it doesn't look like this is completely different from the Old Testament. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, be children of light, okay? Okay. Any final thoughts, comments? Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. It points out all the flaws, yeah.
I never see that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I go, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's true. When that light comes in,
Yeah.
it shows all.
It exposes all the flaws, too. For sure. Yeah. Or in a dark room or something, for sure. Don't let them see the dust.
It's on my black refrigerator. No matter what I do, I can't get that off, and I think, oh, it's looking good.
Yeah.
And then the sun comes up.
Yeah.
And the light comes
Yeah.
on, and there it is.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Yeah, so I said, oh, well.
I read, we all return to dust. So you don't dust because you might be knocking somebody.
you're just knocking around a person. If we all return to dust, don't dust. Just let those people hang out with you. Okay. That's right. Okay, we'll be back next week, and we'll keep moving through chapter 5 and talk about how to live as wise instead of unwise people. And then we'll get into, I told you last week we're going to get into, the whole marriage thing and wives submitting to their husbands, as Paul says they should. Just kidding. No, doesn't. No, it just talks about wives submitting. That's the only verse that we're going to look at. No, we'll talk about it when we get to it. So, all right. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming.